As you guys know, my name is Josh Zanette, and I'm here today to give you a 25-minute training on home fire safety. This is for my BA 457 class. Before we start, I want to get a general understanding of if you guys have ever been affected by a fire, or if you've even ever had a home fire. So by a show of hands, how many in here have had a fire in their home, workplace, somewhere they've been on a day-to-day basis? Okay, so only one person has. I was expecting more. I personally haven't, so I was kind of thinking at least a majority would have been affected by fire. But that's okay. That's good, actually. Hopefully this presentation is a refresher for you guys. Now I want to know if any of you guys have ever made a fire emergency plan, maybe an evacuation plan, anything like that, been talked about in your families. No one. Yeah, and that's the point here. Although fire emergencies are actually the #1 emergency in the United States, people do not prepare for these emergencies. And it's kind of sad, because then when an emergency does happen that's fire related, people don't know what to do and they end up dying. It's a very sad situation. I wanted to give you guys a couple statistics to show you how important it really is. And in the United States, a fire department is called out to a fire every 20 seconds. Now 70% of these fires, these structure fires, are actually from single family homes. So just keep that in mind as I'm going through this presentation. Now my training is going to be broken up into 5 sections. These are them listed here. The first one, we're going to list some common causes of fire, kind of get into it, talk about each one, explain little tips, little things people do wrong. We're going to get into fire prevention. Then we're going to go into preparing for an emergency, into RACE, and RACE is just an acronym that'll help you actually quickly get out or quickly deal with the fire once it happens. And then the very last activity we're going to do is a plan drafting. So what you're going to do is you're actually going to draw out an evacuation plan. And I'm going to hand those out now, actually. That way, when I'm going through it, you guys can actually fill the plan out accordingly. There's going to be 2 things you need to do with the plan, and all it is, it's very simple, it should only take you guys probably 30 seconds to a minute, is to just draw a primary exit and a secondary exit from every single room. It's just a generic floor plan, and you'll see as I hand it out. So like I said, feel free to fill those out. If you don't feel comfortable with filling it out yet, I'm going to kind of go through it more, and you can fill it out as I talk. So the first thing I wanted to address is common causes of fire. Now these are the top 6 common causes of fire. First one, smoking. Second one, cooking. Then we have storage, electricity fires, open flames, and heating appliances. Okay, so smoking is actually the most common cause of fire death. Usually it's due to carelessness, yes, and smoking while you fall asleep or something of that nature. People often smoke in beds, they smoke when they're on the couch, they smoke when they're on the floor. And all these things are extremely bad and are very likely to cause fires. So avoid all of those if possible. Another thing that people are commonly doing wrong is proper ashtray etiquette. You want to have a big, bulky ashtray, something that's not going to get knocked over. It's got to be kid-proof. And you want to make sure you're emptying it out constantly. You do not want it to overflow, possibly catch the surface that the ashtray is on fire. But another thing is you do not want to empty it right after you just get done ashing into it. Okay, you want to make sure that the ashes in there are cold and they're not going to ignite and cause a fire. Now cooking. Cooking is actually the #1 cause of house fires as well as house-related injuries in the United States. It's typically caused, same thing, carelessness. You know, somebody's not paying attention, somebody falls asleep. You know, it's actually more common than you think. Somebody starts cooking, they want to go watch that football game. You know, so it may be very hard to stay in the kitchen when you got something else going on somewhere else that you want to watch, you want to see, as well as sleeping. Some people are under the influence, or maybe they just had a very long day and they're tired and they go and turn on the stove and then they go sit down in their chair. Before you know it, they're sleeping and they don't get woken up until the smoke alarm is going off and there's actually a fire. So just things you really want to avoid at all costs. What I recommend is staying in the kitchen at all times, especially when you're frying and when you're grilling, things like that can have a grease splatter, and it can not only cause fires, burns, and stuff like that nature, as well as turning pot handles inward. It's the same idea. You want to keep those pot handles inward. That way when you're walking by, you don't knock it over. You can easily cause a fire. You can easily burn yourself in that way. So just little tips. The last two things I want to address are keeping 3 feet of clear space around any kind of heating element. And that is the rule of thumb. It's 3 feet. When in doubt, keep 3 feet of clear space. I can't stress that enough. You want to keep a clear space, especially combustible items. Maybe you just got them blowing your nose and you throw it down right next to your oven or next to your burners, and before you know it, it's on fire. So you got to be very careful. And the last thing is very common sense in my mind, but it happens commonly, so I'm going to address it. And that's not using outdoor grills indoors. To me, it's absolutely stupid to do it, but it happens, and some people may not realize that it's not supposed to happen the way it is. Now, this right here is actually a short video on how to handle a grease fire. Keep in mind, it's not the only way you can handle a grease fire, but it is a proven method that works. Another way you can do it is by using the actual pot or pan handle and just placing it over the food or whatever's caught on fire in the kitchen. What this does is it completely eliminates the oxygen out of the equation, and what that does is it puts the fire out. So just another way, think about that.
If your chip pan catches fire, don't panic. Just follow these instructions. 1. Turn off the heat. 2. Run a cloth under a tap and wring it out. 3. Cover the pan and then wait until it's cooled right down. Don't try and move the pan, and whatever you do, don't throw water over the fire. The effects can be devastating.
Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is storage. And a lot of this is what this picture is depicting here. Although this is a pretty extreme case. But what we're looking for here is when people just pile stuff up. A lot of times that stuff is combustible. It's clothes, it's papers, stuff of that nature. Boxes, trash, a lot of stuff that's very combustible and can easily cause a fire. And you want to make sure that that stuff doesn't pile up. All it is a hazard. You want to make sure, especially around exits, because then what's going to happen, you're going to cause a fire, and then it's going to be at your exits. And then you're going to have to find another way out, and that's going to cause panic, and it's not a good deal. Like I said before, anything that can get hot or produces a flame, keep stuff 3 feet away. These piles of newspapers and stuff can get real close to your furnace or your hot water heater, and that can cause lots of problems. So just make sure 3 feet. Another thing is gasoline, like this picture showing here. You keep that stuff outside. A lot of people think, oh, I can put it in my garage, it's okay. But no, because then the heated garage or the heated area causes fumes to build up. The fumes, all they need is one little ignition source and boom. So make sure to keep that stuff outside, preferably in a shed, but outside rather than inside. Electricity fires. Now the problem here is that electricity causes heat to run through wires. Now the more current running through the wires, the hotter it gets. And so this is the problem. It causes a lot of heat and eventually it causes fire. It's commonly due to, like this picture here is depicting, where people just are overloading. You know, I gotta plug my TV, my Xbox, I gotta plug my computer, and I wanna plug the microwave right there and a mini fridge so I don't ever have to move. No, that does not work. It's okay to plug a few things into a plug, maybe even have one of those surge preventer strips, and you can plug into that. But you do not need to be doing this. That is completely ridiculous. You know, there's a reason there's only 2 outlets in every box, because it's not meant to have 7 plug-ins into one little thing. That's how fires occur. You also want to check your cords. If a cord is damaged or frayed, it's common to cause fire. So you got to make sure you are checking that stuff and just throw the object away. If it's something that's got a replaceable cord, that's perfect. Replace the cord. But you better be safe than sorry, you know. It's not worth losing your life or your house because you really like that object and you didn't want to throw it away. Now extension cords. When you use extension cords, they're only for temporary use. And this rule is broken a lot. People, you see them using it year-round and they're running it under things. The last thing you want to do is have an extension cord that you run under rugs. So just avoid that at all costs. Now, open flames. When I'm talking about open flames, I'm mainly referring to candles and barbecues, which is why I have the pictures of those here. Candles should be in a sturdy tip-proof holder. Candles are very dangerous. It's an open flame. It's something that can easily tip over. So you want to make sure it's in as sturdy of a casing as possible. The next thing is you got to make sure that the wick doesn't get too long. The longer the wick, the longer the flame gets. So you want to make sure you cut that, you keep it short. Usually they say about 1/4 of an inch. The next thing, and I've seen a lot of people who lost their house because they didn't do this. When you leave a room or when you leave the house, you have to blow your candles out. You absolutely have to. It is very, very bad if you do not. Because it's so easy for it to get tipped over or for it to be like this and just catch on fire, a curtain, just something hanging above it. And so make sure to blow those out. You need to be extremely cautious when it's around the holiday seasons. Because around the holiday season, Christmas, Thanksgiving time, there's stuff that is hanging all over, these decorations. And these decorations are very, very combustible. Stuff that can catch fire very easily. And another thing you want to be careful about is your trees. A lot of people don't think about this, but your Christmas tree, if it gets dry and you don't water it enough, it is very, very combustible. And I'm going to show a video of that here soon. It's actually scary how fast that thing can catch on fire, and pretty soon the room is completely filled with fire. Now, like I said, barbecue grills, they need to be cleaned regularly. If they're not cleaned, it's just more of a hazard. So clean them regularly. Make sure, like I said before, keep them outside, keep them away from a building, you know, not under a tree, stuff like that. Just be smart about it, use your common sense, and you should be safe. Here's that video I was telling you guys about the Christmas tree. It shows a time frame below it as well, so you can see how fast that tree catches. So as you guys can see, in 26 seconds, that thing is completely engulfed just about the entire room. It's very, very scary and can cause a lot of damage. Now, the last cause of fire that I want to talk about is heating appliances. And when I say heating appliances, I'm referring to wood stoves, pellet stoves, forced hot air furnaces, things of that nature, a space heater, just anything that can produce heat or flame. You guys gotta be extremely careful with this kind of equipment. My biggest tip for this type of stuff is to have it maintained annually. You want to make sure that your stuff is running tip-top shape, that it's cleaned, that everything is good to go. And also, if you install something, you got to have somebody come and check it, make sure. I know that may be very hard for some people, the very independent people, but it could be a matter of life and death. So you got to make sure that it's installed properly and that it's working good. Like I keep repeating, 3 feet. You want 3 feet around these things. As this picture here shows, this space heater definitely was not 3 feet away from that bed. And because of it, they could lose their whole house, if not at least a majority of that room. So just keep that in mind. Now, like I was telling you guys before, I have been affected by fire before, and it was in a case like this. We were at my cabin, and it was at night. We went to go to bed, and what we do is we hang stuff by our wood stove so that it can dry off in the night. Well, before you know it, something falls off onto the wood stove, it catches fire. We did have a smoke alarm, but for some reason it wasn't mounted on the ceiling like it should have been. Instead, it was sitting on the floor. And so what happened is, by the time we actually knew that there was a fire, it waited until the smoke had built up in the ceiling and then pushed its way down and come all the way to the floor. And so by the time we woke up in a separate room, that entire place was filled with smoke. And luckily, our stove was kind of out in the middle of the room, and so it didn't really have a way of catching anything else around it on fire. But it was a very scary situation that we could have easily passed away in if we did not have a smoke detector to inform us that the entire cabin had filled with smoke. Now I'm going to go into the second section of this training, fire prevention. And I'm going to address just the equipment that you should have in your home to help protect you. The first one is a smoke detector. Most of you guys should be familiar with this. It's just an alarm that goes off when smoke is in the room. We also have a carbon monoxide detector. This is very important because carbon monoxide is colorless and odorless. So it's going to tell you when it's going to inform you when there's this gas present in the room. And it is actually deadly. You can die from an excessive amount of carbon monoxide for a short period of time, or you can have it for a small amount over a long period of time and it can still be deadly. So it's a very scary substance, and you gotta kind of be as cautious as you possibly can with it. Some things on smoke detectors: you want to install a smoke detector in every bedroom, outside of every sleeping area, and on every floor, as well as in the kitchen, things like that. You need to test these smoke detectors each month. And I know most people do not do this, but it's critical. If you have a smoke detector that you forgot to put new batteries in it, or maybe it doesn't work for some reason, it's faulty. You never know, but it's better to be safe than sorry, so you need to test these things before rather than after. Every 10 years you need to replace them as well. At that point, they're kind of getting outdated, they may not work as efficiently as they used to, and so you replace them. The last piece of equipment I have listed here is fire extinguisher. There's 4 different types, as you can see, A, B, C, and K. You're going to watch a movie here in a minute that's not only going to explain the types, but it's going to go into what's an acronym called PASS, pull, aim, squeeze, and sweep. And this is going to teach you how to use it. Unfortunately, the video did not get all 4 of them in, and it missed the type K fire extinguisher, but luckily that is a very simple one to remember. K for kitchen fire, so it's for grease and that kind of stuff. Here's the video.
Hi, I'm Joel with the Berkeley Fire Department. I'd like to take a moment to talk with you about fire extinguishers. Fire extinguishers are a safe, effective tool for extinguishing small fires. When it comes to fire, be smart. This fire extinguisher, which most people have in their home, will discharge its entire contents in 10 to 15 seconds. That is why we use fire extinguishers on small fires. Fire extinguishers are rated A, B, and C fires. A being ordinary combustibles such as paper and wood products. B being flammable and combustible liquids such as gas. C for electrical fires such as your toaster or blender. To use the extinguisher, remember PASS. Pull, aim, squeeze, and sweep. Pull the pin. Aim at the base of the fire, not the flames. Squeeze the trigger. And sweep at the base of the fire. Pull the pin, aim at the base of the fire, not the flame. Squeeze the trigger and sweep at the base of the fire. Some important things to remember. Always keep the exit between you and the fire.
Okay, so due to lack of time, I'm going to kind of cut it off short, but you guys got the general idea. Now we're going to move into section 3, and this is preparing for an emergency. The ultimate thing here is to create a plan. Now you need to create a plan with everybody involved. This is something that the family needs to be involved with. You cannot have 1 or 2 people that know and the rest don't. So make sure you get everyone together, sit them down, they're paying attention, and you make this together. I have an emergency go bag listed on here. That is something I spoke about in my previous speeches, and it is something that could be very important. Just a little bag full of items that you're going to need, and you can easily grab it on your way out, or hopefully it's even kind of on the exterior, maybe in a shed, something like that, which is the items you're going to need. Now, escape routes. Before you actually create your escape routes, you need to look at your home, and you need to analyze it for potential hazards as well as obstacles. Not only just your home, but within your home too. You know, if you have a family member who is paralyzed, you need to make a plan. That way you can figure out a way to get them in their wheelchair and get them out as fast as possible. But like I said, these escape routes, there should be 2 escape routes out of each room, a primary and a secondary, and you want to make sure they're diverse. You can't have one fire blocking both of them, because that defeats the purpose of having 2. So that is what you guys are actually going to be doing. You need 2 out of each room. Now, once you get out, you need to have a meeting place, somewhere that's out of the way, somewhere you guys can meet up and make sure everyone's accounted for, and then start from there. A huge portion here is actually practicing the plan. The plan may not do you any good if you don't practice it, you're not familiar with it, you don't know what you're going to do. An emergency causes panic. People start freaking out. They don't know what's going on, and you need to prepare and practice. And it's just the biggest step. I can't stress that enough, just practice it. Now, when you practice, you want to make it as realistic as possible. Maybe do some during the night, some during the day. You want to be prepared regardless of the circumstances. And the last step here is ongoing assessment. You need to continually analyze your plan and make sure that it is still accurate for the home you're in. Maybe you extended off of the side of your house. You wanted to make the kitchen bigger. Well, that needs to play into the plan. Maybe you put in extra windows and they're easier to get out of than the previous windows you had. Just things like that you can integrate into your plan and make sure it's still effective and gets the job done. Now we have the last, section 4. Section 4 is RACE. RACE is just an acronym. They do not necessarily go in a row, but it is a way to help you guys remember how to quickly and effectively get out of a building or deal with a fire once it happens. The R, as you can see, stands for remove everyone. The A, alert everyone. C, confine the fire. And E, extinguish. So obviously, when a fire occurs, you want to make sure everyone knows. So that's the A portion. You want to get everybody out as soon as you possibly can. That's when the R portion comes in, remove everyone. You want to act calmly when the fire alarm sounds, not freak out. That causes more problems and usually doesn't end up too well. Once you leave the building, you do not return, not for anything. You get out and you stay out. When you come up to a door, usually you check the door for heat. You got to see if there's heat on the other side of that door to see if you have a safe route out. So a lot of times what people do is they touch the doorknobs. Doorknobs, usually metal, they conduct very well, and so you touch those. Depending on what you're feeling, you choose if that's the proper route or if you go your other route. Now, confine the fire. What this is saying is when you leave a room, you close that door. You need that door closed right behind you. That way it confines the fire. It keeps it into that area, and it's going to have to burn through that doorway before it can move out into the other portions of the house. And the last one is extinguish. Now, you only extinguish a fire if it's a small fire and if you're confident with your abilities. Like that video was saying, it's only appropriate for you to use a fire extinguisher if and only if you feel confident and it's small enough. If it gets out of hand, it's actually going to be worse for you to try and use a fire extinguisher because it's just going to cost you that valuable time. Now, if you catch on fire, I have this little thing here to kind of remind you, which I'm sure everybody still remembers from being a little kid. But if you catch on fire, stop, drop, and roll. It's very easy, very simple. You guard your face when you're rolling so you don't hurt yourself even more. I wouldn't recommend stopping right in the middle of the fire and stopping, dropping, and rolling, but do it as soon as you possibly can. And also do not run when you're on fire. That just gives the fire more oxygen. It's going to just get bigger, and that's the last thing you want. Once you get out of the home, obviously, as soon as it's safe, you call 911. You want to make sure you get the fire department there as soon as possible, and they can start dealing with the fire. Now, these are the plans that I gave you guys. We did this little activity where you make 2 ways out in every room. Now, it looks like you guys are all done. I'll go ahead and grab those, take a look at them. Okay. Okay, so most of you got this fairly easy. It's not too difficult. There was a few things I saw that I'm going to kind of critique. Not that you necessarily did it wrong, but that you need to just think about certain instances that may not be fitting. So one of you had you come out of this window here. And if you think about it, you're gonna have to climb onto the sink and climb through that window. That may not be very easy. You know, obviously, your primary route is to come out this way and come back around this door and come outside. But if you have to, take this window here. You know, it's a lot bigger, as you can see. A lot of times they're either sliding, maybe they come out, but there's a lot better chance of you being able to get out of that. Then over here, there was another one where somebody said, okay, their primary route's to come out this front door, good idea, but their secondary route's to come out of this window. Now you notice there's 2 windows in this room. I would not recommend having this as your secondary route. Not that you may not be able to get out of it, you know, it may work out great, but at the same time, if there's a fire right here, you don't want it to block both of your exit routes. So what you do, you have this your primary, and this other window over here is your secondary, because even if there's a fire here, you know you can still get out. This is my drafting of the successful plan. As you can see, I told you primary, secondary, primary, secondary. Once you get outside, you want to get to that meeting place. You want to make sure you get to your family and you can make sure everyone's there. Here's my resources page. Just a couple different areas that I went to for information. I'm happy that I got to teach you guys this. I hope you really learned something. And these little things can be the difference between life and death. So please just take this into consideration and think about it and make a plan and prepare. Thanks again.